Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the Hopium Storage Shed. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron, here for the Hopium supply, or at least I was. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out, so we've got plenty of League of Legends to talk about this week. We've got the U.S. Grand Prix and some F1 related news. We have Magic the Gathering, all the usual bits and pieces. Justin, it's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you too. Bits and pieces. I kind of like that. Intro. Yeah, as North American fans, I think we just have to change our moniker to Western fans and just get behind Rogue. They're the only ones from this side of the pond that makes it out. And there was for sure a lot of talk about hopium, copium, all sorts of breathing mechanisms over the weekend, man.
Yeah, lots of good reason for it. For both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, Europe did not do phenomenally either. Rogue also struggled pretty heavily in week 2, but we'll get into all of that later. I'll start us off this week with the Rose, Thorn, and Seed. So, for my Rose, I got everything resolved with my computer issues and all, and the difference between my old hard drive and my new hard drive and the speeds at which things load, the speeds at which I get updates and things like that done. I did not have any clue that would be such a drastic difference between the two. So
now, when did you build that PC?
So I built it in 2020.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think I finished it around April or May, so it's like 2.5 years old.
Gotcha. That's funny because the wisdom that I understand now is the solid state drives are the way to go, and the hard disk drives are, a thing of the past. It's interesting that just in those 2 years, we're just kind of learning that.
Yeah.
And, you go through the upgrade and find that it is, that much faster. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't expect it because with the HDD drive, I thought it was mostly storage. I didn't think about the need for that to be faster or things like that with the way it transfers information. I'm I save things to it, it just sits there, but not thinking about all of the times that my computer is pulling information that's saved onto the hard drive and everything back and forth. So it's partially just my lack of knowledge of computers, which is funny to say after building a computer. I felt like I was learning a lot when I did it, and now I'm oh, there's plenty more. So it's nice to have that upgrade in working. Kept all of my data, didn't lose anything, just the process of reinstalling programs and whatnot. But
sure,
overall, I'm very happy with the upgrade. So
now, when you did when you moved everything over and reinstalled, did you get a little report of the apps and programs that were removed in the uninstall or reinstall in Windows?
So I was basically installing Windows fresh onto
Gotcha.
my the new hard drive. So I had initially copied everything over, and for whatever reason, something got corrupted and all. So I essentially just did a full reinstall of Windows, and so the information of what apps, what things to download that I personally got was I just went into my program files folders on my hard drive. And I was like,
Gotcha.
okay. Once I realized that even though I had the data for my settings for different updates, things like that, that I still had to reinstall the actual program onto this hard drive. So I just
Mhm.
went through my program files, and any program that I saw in there that wasn't just a like log files or different things like that, I would just go, oh, there's a Steam folder, gotta go download Steam, and went through it that way. So that was
Gotcha.
the easiest way for myself to do it. I know there's programs and websites and things that you can save your like program downloads and things like that. So when you build a new computer, if you do a wipe, you can just reinstall everything super easily.
Mm,
I did not do that, so I
gotcha.
had to do it the tedious way. But
Hmm. Gotcha. Well, I'm glad it all went well and that the new solid state drive is working well. That's pretty cool, man.
definitely, I'm excited about it. I've got more upgrades I'll do to this over time, but that seems to have made the biggest immediate difference. So
Nice.
definitely happy. My thorn is just kind of a general thing, and so my thorn is that I am kind of irritated with myself for being irritated. Like yesterday, I just had a pretty rough day. It was like anyone and everyone was just kind of being frustrating to me, whether it was like me, my nerves being a little easier to get on, or just people being particularly a pain in the ass. Like I
Hmm.
had people from the neighboring townhomes call my apartment complex to complain about the things that people park in our parking lot. Like nothing. There's no monster trucks. There's no like rusted out cars. It's like people have their trailers that they pull on their
Sure.
trucks, or like a boat that this guy takes to the lake or to the shore or whatever every summer. And this lady just went on for 15 minutes about how our place looks like trash, and it's she doesn't want to see it, and she doesn't understand why we let people blah 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 blah. And it's like, lady, these people live here, those are their belongings, we have tons of parking lot space, and none of this looks bad. Like, they're not beat up, they're like nice clean polished trailers, a nice boat, like just things like that. And then just continued throughout the day with issues, complaints, and I by the end of the day I was frustrated. I got home, I was like grumpy with Colleen, and like I told her flat out, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not in a good mood. It like you have not done anything at all to preface that, because I'm like, when I am in that mood, I'm just not like quite my normal self. I don't think I'm
Sure.
bad, but I'm just a little testier, a little like touchier.
Sure.
So
Yeah, you don't want to take it out on your significant other.
yeah, and so it's just it frustrates me that I can't always get myself out of that like state of mind once I'm there,
Right.
because it's not. I don't want to like carry those things with me. Like I've
Hmm.
talked about before with like being angry and holding grudges and stuff. To me, that like exhausts me. And so I don't like
Yeah.
being in a bad mood. But once I'm there, I'm kind of like, it takes me a bit to just get rid of it. The last night it was just I needed to sleep, and like at the end of when I woke up this morning, I was felt a lot more back to normal and all. But just in general, it's annoying to me that I can't quite control that, because I feel like I work pretty hard to like keep in control of my emotions and things like that pretty well, and not let things uh, get to me. And so
Right.
it's difficult when I like can't fix it. So
Sure. Well, it sounds like you handled it really well, saying to those around you that, like, hey, I'm not in the best spot. Let's not cause issues here because I'm having a tough time. It's a lot easier in that sense to kind of just separate and maybe like you said, just take some time for yourself. Now I'm curious, is there anything that you look forward to or like in the moment think you could do that would be like beneficial to maybe like bring those notches down a little bit?
Um, I don't know if there's anything exactly because it's just the things that annoy me just like stick in the back of my head kind of,
Sure,
and so when
sure.
I'm not distracted with something, not watching TV or whatever, those things just like pop into mind, or I don't know if they're like, I just feel physically like tenser. So
Yeah,
maybe finding a way to kind of relax or work out some of that tension, whatever that be, might be a good option.
yeah.
Um, so that's there's potential, but
Yeah, because you don't want to be like tense and angry. Just kind of,
yeah,
one simple strategy that you could think up that you can use, may be useful. You don't
yeah.
want to be
So
all, you know.
definitely, and so definitely some good things to think about, but I don't know if there's quite a solution, but one potential one is my seed, and so Colleen and I are we decided this past week that we are going to be getting a puppy. So she had signed us up for a wait list for a breeder, because we wanted a cockapoo puppy. Both of us had that as our family dog and all. So last Thursday, she got the phone call. It was like, hey, we had 2 litters. So we have puppies if you are still interested. And it took me a couple days to think through all the logistics of it, financial side, like just all the logistical things of how are we going to take care of it, what work schedules, things like that.
Hmm.
And overall, I kind of came to the conclusion that we're in a pretty good spot right now. Like with our schedule, we don't have any weddings or really big events other than the holidays until late spring. So we'll have time to train the puppy and all. It's going to be cold out, so um, we're probably not going to be going out and about as much. So we'll be at home with the dog more. Um, I'm excited. Dogs are cute. I'm excited about having a dog. It's just the like I needed to take. I couldn't just like immediately say yes until I had thought through
Hmm.
everything. But now I'm just excited for it. We're I think going to go up this weekend to the
Hell yeah.
breeders and pick out our puppy and potentially I guess decide on a name at that point. We've got a couple, and so we're waiting to see the puppy's personality before we
Sure.
fully make that decision.
Sure. You got to see if it's a Sparky or a Dopey.
Yeah, exactly. So,
See if
um,
it's Jason or a Timmy.
well, so we're going for a girl, so probably not a Jason or a Timmy, but you never know.
You never know.
So that is, but yeah, that's my rose thorn and seed. But looking forward to that. Justin, what's been going on with your week? Tell us all about it.
Love to, good sir. A puppy sounds super exciting. That's really fun. Hopefully the meeting goes well, and you just take to each other like ketchup and mustard. That I hope that goes really well.
Thanks.
But yeah, my rose here, I'll start with, and this is a dumb one, but it does make me chuckle like every time I drive by, and it clears my head in a positive way. There's an eyeglasses billboard on 422 going towards Reading, and it is like a bunch of silhouettes of zombies
Okay.
and in kind of like on like a dusty whatever, and it's a bunch of them, and it says on the billboard, like, will you see them coming, like Bernard's glasses or whatever. And it just makes me chuckle. I wonder, like, who came up with it. They must be maybe like a cinema fan or just like a spooky fan. I don't know, but
How
it
long
gets me.
have how long do you think it's been there?
6 to 8 months, probably.
Okay, I was gonna say if it was really old, maybe it was like when the pandemic started. They're like, oh, let's like jump on something that like, oh, the pandemic, everyone's gonna be zombies or something like that. But no, that's funny. I think that's a
Yeah, it's
clever attention grabber for a business.
and if anything, it like spooks me on the way where I'm like, man, will I make it out? You know, I just think of like all the people driving around and I'm like, no, like I'm in a hot spot right now. Like it's gonna be brutal. So it's funny that like on the way to the place that I'm going, I'm like, man, dude, these zombies are gonna get me. I get all like in my head and whatever. So
That's
that's a great
funny.
billboard. That's my rose. I saw that today. So I figured, wow, we'll throw that in there. I'll do my seed here first, and then I'll hit my thorn. Obviously, I can never just be like, light and whatever. So my seed here, me and Sarah have been working on a filing system, taking kind of what I learned from the music collection organizing, and said, hey, we've got this filing cabinet here that's filling up with, a bunch of our Touch of Phoenix paperwork and client intakes and whatever. So we're just taking it all digital, we're scanning it all in, putting it so it's all in one home, and then coming up with a system of like, all right, so then instead of just like letting it pile up, then we can just, as one new one comes in, we can just scan it in
Oh
and
yeah.
do it right
Once
away.
once you catch up with that stuff, it's so much easier to do like everything one at a
Sure.
time. Um, or even like if you do it a week at a time, like that's a
Right.
lot easier than playing catch up over the past couple of years of business. So, um,
And even like I'm not even sure. I feel like it's like catching up where it wasn't work I should have been doing, just
oh
like
yeah,
changing the way we're doing it because like it just kind of isn't working. So in that sense, yeah, kind of catching up and doing a lot all at once. But yeah, I'm looking forward to using this system moving forward and basically just like going paperless and not not having like it's literally like pounds of paper that are just sitting around, you
yeah.
know. So just going all digital is kind of exciting.
Will once you get everything scanned in, do you still have documents that you are scanning, or will everything be completed virtually as well? Like,
Oh no, this is just the start of it. I'm
okay,
starting with the client intake forms. Likely there's going to be a bunch of stuff that can't leave the filing cabinet. Like we have a little section for like product booklets that we have. So like for our microwave and our this and our that, like we just slide them in there. So if anything happens, we can just reference them. Like I'm not scanning all of those in. So
oh
obviously
no,
those will stay
no, I
there.
mean more like
Um,
so client intake forms is like if someone new comes in, are they going to be doing it on an iPad or something, or are they going to fill out a physical paper and you'll scan in each of those as new ones come in once you're like you've gotten all the backlog that you're like done finished.
Yes, great question. And the answer is both, where we're definitely going to do our best to push the online intake form that we have, where it just gets saved on, think of it like a massage POS, right? Where it just has all of our clients we can schedule, we write our notes and all that stuff. So, like,
Mm,
all of their information is stored on there
okay.
securely. So when clients, basically when clients tell us that they have a good email that they check and whatever, then we have them do it that way, and then it's super simple and paperless.
Nice.
But unfortunately, if anybody comes in and they're like, "Oh no, I'm 100, I don't have an email," then sorry, you got to fill one out by hand, and then we'll just scan that in and
Yeah.
add to our system.
So, and when you scan it, does it automatically pull the information into a profile, or do you have to manually input that for like to create? Like you said, you have your clients are saved and everything. You can just schedule with each one. It shows you a history. Like, do you have to
Hmm.
do new profile and put George Smith into the thing and age 98 and go through all that information to put it in?
No, I believe most of that gets put on there like when we do our note. So like yes, all that data gets compiled, but kind of I guess at different times.
Okay.
That would be interesting to have a scanner that could like pull the relevant data off and like populate it into a thing. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I saw one of them like on like one of those late night as seen on TV things.
Yeah,
But
and I feel like
either
with
way,
like depending on the program too, like it depends on the capabilities of that as well,
right.
along with just the scanner like picking it up as if it's like a piece of paper and turning it into a Word document that you can edit or whatever. So
Right, that'd be sick.
yeah.
Smart scanners. But yeah, so that's my seed here for the week, and then my thorn is learning how to delay gratification. So when I bought my new computer, I'm just like you were, I'm reinstalling everything, get my setup. But in around that time, I learned that all of the Kingdom Hearts are on PC on the Epic Game Store. And of the things that I wanted to keep of all those video games, it was like the Kingdom Hearts ones. And the
Okay.
Kingdom Hearts story is kind of what I really wanted to revisit in that mound of games. And I was like, but I don't, there's no way I need to keep all this bullshit to play those games. So I looked it up. It's all on PC and like remastered. It's like the final mix that includes the bonus Japanese content that was only available there. So it's like it's the whole shebang. And I was
Nice.
like, oh, well that's sick. So I got the laptop. Once I got the laptop, installed that. It was on sale, so I was being reasonable. And but I was like, oh man, but I would also love to play this game too, because I sold my Formula One game that I had for the PlayStation. So like I'm not using my wheel, but I really want to use my wheel. On Steam, there's a game called Assetto Corsa that's
Oh
like
yeah, I just saw something about that on Twitter today, and it
yeah,
looks super realistic. It looks dope.
yeah, big looking forward to it, but I was like I can't just dump a bunch of money. We got to be reasonable. I'm not trying to spend a whole lot. Like I'm big like let's live below our means here. And I was like, but I can't or I don't need to like withhold it eternally from myself. Let's just like wait a little bit, right? So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm playing a decent bit of Kingdom Hearts. I'm using the thing that I purchased, not just like on to the next. So I was like, all right, in November 1st, I'll purchase that game and I'll be able to get back on the virtual track. And I've been successful so far. I haven't because I'll be honest, I've gone to the Steam page for it like 100 times, and I'm just like, it's only $20. I could just grab it right now,
Yeah.
but it is the like just hold off a second, just chill.
I do the same thing. Like I have mine is more like each paycheck. Each time I get a
Hmm.
paycheck every 2 weeks, I just immediately pay whatever I have coming up, whether it's
Sure.
rent or student loans, like any of those things. I just get that out, and then once the rest of everything is sitting there, I'm like, okay, like can save, I can do this, I can do that. This is for groceries, and I kind of like look to divvy it up. But if I think my like timing for things like that is, I'm like, well, I'll wait till like next paycheck. Or if it's like a little
There you
more
go.
expensive, I'm like, okay, I'll wait like two paychecks, and then I just kind of put like a little bit aside per one to
There you go. I
for
like
those
that.
things. So that's kind of I find it easy as a way to like delay that without
Yeah.
causing myself too much like mental anguish of like I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm like no, like I have a day that I'm like okay, the money comes in to the bank account. Now it's okay to spend a little bit. Like
Hmm.
outside of that, I'm like gotta wait till that next thing. So it's a timed thing that I'm always like, okay, if there is something, I'm like, okay, that's 4 weeks from now, or that's two
Yeah.
weeks from now, and just kind of do it that way. So
And that's interesting that you said that it kind of removes the like worrying about the thing, because you're right. Once I put it in my calendar, set that goal, like resolved it in that scenario, I was like, oh yeah, this is great, and I haven't really thought about it. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, and maybe a strategy I'll look forward to using in the future. But that is my rose, thorn, and seed here. I think a pretty decent one here for the week. But we have some Formula One news that we want to get into. We want to preview the race ahead of Austin at the Circuit of Americas. So a little bit here to get into now, Aaron. We had a bunch of your Twitter links coming in here.
yeah, so just some general notes and things that I had seen throughout the week. So to start off with, Sir Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes and their team camp. So Lewis spent part of his week. He went to the Denver Broncos, Los Angeles Chargers Thursday night football game this week. It was again like a pretty rough game to watch, but he was there. It's cool that during the season while they're in the US, he was able to take that time as one of the owners to go and see the team in person, because a decent portion of the season happens while F1 is still underway. So
Sure.
pretty cool to see that. But of course, there's uh, just other news that was talked about. So, referring to the Red Bull cost cap breach and things like that, Toto had come out and in an interview or a couple of different interviews, he had basically said that he feels like the pieces of the puzzle for their car and their team are now complete and in place, that they had struggled kind of to get there from the get go with the new regulations and whatnot, but now they feel like they are in a good spot moving forward, and that it was just an interruption to the dominance that Mercedes has seen over the past 8 years or so. So definitely expect Mercedes to kind of come out hot next season, and look a little bit back to form. But he also, in an interview, essentially said that he is ready to break the cost cap if there isn't some sort of punishment that at least fits the penalty for Red Bull, or fits the crime, as it were. So,
Right.
which is why I think I was concerned about this the most, is that if you don't give some sort of reasonable and like penalizing penalty, like taking away wind tunnel time or reducing the budget of a team that breaches it, things like that, teams are just gonna blow through it. I saw a million memes this week about Mercedes new car next season after Toto decides to not care about the cost cap, and it's like spaceships and like rockets and things like that flying around the track, and I'm like, yeah, like that is the fear. If they're just like, oh, Red Bull, don't do it again, every team that has the financial ability will just blow through the cost cap and be like, we don't care,
Right.
because all you get is a slap on the wrist if you break this.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that it is so combative, as though it was, and maybe it'd be giving too much Red Bull to say that, too much goodwill to Red Bull to say this, but like it's the first year of this being introduced, where previously teams were spending like an obscene amount of money over the course of these 18 races,
Yeah.
and with this being the first year that it's rained in, a cost cap has been set. Like, of course, there's going to be honestly, of course, there's going to be hiccups and mistakes, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, one of the one of the likely scenarios of a cost cap is somebody just goes over because of the tracking systems or the accountability systems
Yeah.
aren't necessarily in place. Maybe you don't have the right people in these roles. So there's definitely going to be some growing pains. So for it to be so combative from Toto Wolff, it's kind of like, I mean, yeah, sure, but that just seems like a bunch of like blustering is what I would say.
I get what you mean. Cuz yes. It sounds like by all accounts I've seen from Red Bull's side at least, which I mean, of course they're going to deny anything,
Sure.
but so take it with a grain of salt, but they it seems to like that they've basically admitted, oh yeah, like our numbers were different than the FIA's, but that's because of XYZ with our budget. And so
Mhm.
if it wasn't properly like laid out or these fine details weren't given of like what technically is in that and outside of that, like it doesn't seem to me that Red Bull intentionally like was like, oh shit, we need a couple extra front wings. Like, let's spend a little more money and like slide it through. It doesn't seem like it was something nefarious, but either way, I understand like wanting the rules to have like penalties and to be held accountable as well from like Mercedes and anyone else's side who does feel like they stayed within the guidelines to be able to like it's definitely combative from them, but I think because they are trying to avoid or they don't want it to become a situation of who's gonna like get by with the biggest slap on the wrist like
Mhm.
so I understand why even in the first year of having this, they would kind of want to make sure that there are penalties for breaking the rules. Even if maybe it gets harsher after year one, just pure, and they, like, as long as they communicate those things properly, I feel like from the FIA with whatever penalties, which they still haven't gotten to, if it's explained properly and they say, hey, these are the penalties, this is what it is, this is like the precedent we're setting going forward, but we understand that this was the first year of this situation. We are not going to like push to the absolute boundaries of these penalizations. I think that would be a good way to come out and say it and just say, this is what we think should be done for these breaches. Um, this is what we're doing based on X, Y, and Z about the situation.
Right. Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with that where even if it's not the max punishment now, just say like, "Eh, well, you had your one freebie here, but it can be a lot worse because yeah, we're not really fucking around." And then from Toto's side like to kind of like steelman his side of it, you're right. If the team principles of the other orgs aren't firm in their positioning in that like let's say principals committee thinking of like all 10 of them
Mm-hmm.
where if they don't put their foot down in that committee it's like oh yeah okay then Christian and Red Bull are just going to walk all over them and just say like you know the FIA is just our pocketbook and we'll spend whatever the fuck we want and this and that like you actually do need that line in the sand from the other principals like Toto to say like, oh yeah, we're not. If you're gonna do that, we're gonna do that, and then it's all out the window.
Yeah, like posturing a little bit just to
Yeah,
kind of, yeah, make
not to
it
get
clear
walked
that they're
on.
like, hey, like we are making our stance very clear about how we feel about these things. Like we will make a big deal out of it if we have to.
Hmm.
It's kind of it's not a threat, it's a promise, like
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing. So
I
I
think
thought that
yeah.
was absolutely. I think that each team's got to look out for their best interests. So there's no hard feelings that I'm feeling, at least in any kind of way. I just am looking forward to finding out what the FIA is going to decide to do and then kind of move on. I think that this is something that hopefully we can put in the past. Teams will follow by the rule book and all moving forward. I mean, every couple years, there's got to be some sort of instance of someone trying to bend or push the limits of it. I mean, not Aston Martin, but wow, what were they before? Not Force India.
Racing Point.
Racing Point. Holy moly. Racing Point making the pink Mercedes was the big fuss a couple years ago. So now this is, I feel like there's always going to be instances of teams pushing boundaries, kind of testing the limits and occasionally going over. So I hope that this is kind of looked at in a similar fashion. Penalties are handed out and we move forward, hopefully better for it.
Yeah, and I don't want it to be hampering. I don't want it to be continually hampering as it is gumming up the results of a championship.
Yeah.
So that's really unfortunate. And either whatever side of the camp you're on,
Right. Yeah. Everyone wants things, especially in a competitive championship, to be handled fairly and for I think everyone wants the best person to win and everyone thinks that their guy's the best person. So it's you just want fairness and no discrepancies that people can look back on, because it does just cause frustration on every side further along. For people who are fans of Red Bull and Max Verstappen, it definitely gets annoying seeing everyone online just constantly railing against them and being picking out any instance they can find of something that Red Bull or Max did wrong. And similarly, I'm sure for people who are fans of Lewis Hamilton, it's frustrating to be well, maybe he could have won if everything was followed to a T and everything. Maybe that result would have been different. And I mean, yeah, it could be. But I would prefer to kind of move forward with as little of those issues as possible. So hopefully fairness reigns and penalties kind of fit the crime and we move forward. So
agreed.
What is Lewis's motto?
Still we rise.
Still we rise. Yeah. So hopefully we rise forward. I'm sure we will. But the next little bit of news is from the Williams and Nick Latifi camp, and so Williams this week is going to be sporting a pretty cool livery for the U.S. Grand Prix, stars and stripes all over it, looking very bold and brash, ready to be out on the racetrack.
It's interesting. Now, I'm no patriot or anything. I'm not a fan of the flag. I'm not even partial to colors. I don't really care. I'm just gonna throw this at you. So, why is it? So wait. Before I say something dumb, Williams is a British company, correct?
Yes, they are.
Red, white, and blue is in the British flag, correct? The Union Jack.
It is. No stars. But
no stars. Okay, so they are kind of saying hey, we're paying homage to the red, white, and blues here.
Yeah, it's definitely for the U.S. Grand Prix and everything.
Sure.
And so I guess the side of it that shifts things a little bit. So since Williams was sold and Frank Williams passed away, Williams is owned by a private investment firm based in New York. So it is. I would still consider it a British company, but I guess technically now it would be owned by a U.S. entity.
Gotcha.
But I think it's similar to was it Mexico that Red Bull did the white liveries the other year? And I feel like teams.
Yes. It was, they did the white liveries in place of whatever race got put in place of the Japanese Grand Prix.
Gotcha.
Which was that the Mexico Grand Prix?
I think it might have been Mexico.
Okay, very cool. Then yeah, I think you're right. Dead
on. With that, I mean, McLaren went to the retro livery for Monaco and things like that. I guess teams just kind of fit the livery to the track sometimes, and with the U.S. Grand Prix being a decently big one, just because of the growing U.S. fan base and small number of U.S. or nearby races, I think it's cool that they designed a livery for that and all as a special kind of weekend. I think it's cool. I do find it funny that the just generic way to be like America is just to take pieces of the flag and just slap them onto something, like stripe here, stripe there, red, white, blue, stars, done. It does look cool though.
Yeah, it does look cool, but Mercedes isn't rocking up to Baku with the Azerbaijan flag on their car, and Mercedes isn't rocking up to Spain with Spain. So it's funny that coming to America, they're like, oh yeah, just use the stars. Everybody loves that shit.
Well, do you think it's also just maybe well, do you think it could be partially, there's two parts of this. So one, because the circuit of the Americas is in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas is a very America state.
Yeah.
So that's one side of it.
Yeah, they're like, we gotta fit in. We gotta show our pride a little bit.
But I think the other side of it is what kind of design would potentially encompass all of America and that kind of vibe. I with Monaco, it's just a bald eagles all over the car, or just I don't know, paint it red and yellow and slap a McDonald's hamburger on the side of it and throw slap. Hey, that's what everyone. That's what all the other countries think about us anyway. So
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. Sadly.
So I feel like the flag and things like that are easy to be just chosen as a blanket, across the board. This won't bother anyone. We can't throw a picture of the Statue of Liberty on the tail if you're not gonna have a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge on the front wing. I guess trying to just kind of blanket cover it and all that might play into it as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And who doesn't love a custom livery coming into a weekend? So yeah, just kind of a question I had there for Williams Racing.
Definitely funny. That's now, just the go-to.
Is 800 Congress, is that near the track? I'm just reading the Twitter post. I guess they have a pop-up store that you can go buy Williams merch at and see this hot livery.
Yeah,
I'm just curious if that's at the track or what's
800 up. Congress, I believe, is just a location in Austin, Texas. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. So that's how addresses work.
Well, so to answer your question, I have no idea, to be honest, how close.
Sure.
The Circuit of the Americas is, it looks to be about a I don't know, I'd say 5 to 10 minute drive outside of Austin.
Okay.
And maybe a little bit further. It's like near the airport. It's like Austin, then you get to the airport, and then you get to Circuit of the Americas. So it's
Gotcha.
a little ways out, but not too bad.
Gotcha. Here I have you doing GeoGuessr on the podcast.
Oh
But yeah,
yeah.
no, cool Williams livery, and the other bit of Williams news is Nicholas Latifi going to be going to Chip Ganassi Racing
Yep.
for some IndyCar
And so I think this
F1
is gonna
retirement.
be. This is kind of. This is what I'm excited about. I am going to be watching like as much IndyCar next year because I am a Nick Latifi fan. Go
Yeah,
Tifi.
wait,
I am.
no, I was gonna say, wait, you can't be serious.
So no,
Like I can
what?
understand Grosjean, like he wasn't a bad driver, but like
Yeah,
Latifi doesn't
no.
bring anything to the party.
So this is what I'm looking forward to. So Grosjean went from a like low tier car in F1, but he was kind of a middle of the pack driver a little bit, and he went to IndyCar and he's had success. I'd say he leans towards the upper half of drivers in IndyCar. Like he's done
Wait,
above average.
wasn't Roman Grosjean placing
He
like P5 and
with
like
like
P6 with the Lotus?
he was with the Lotus, but then he also had his inconsistencies, crashes, things like that. And then on Haas, of course, he had his fair share of issues. Not that the Haas was a
Okay.
competitive car, but I'd say he was like
Like a
slightly.
flickering end of the career.
It was like slightly above average in F1. He probably could have stayed in F1, like over some of the like over Latifi or some of those guys, but
Okay.
just situational and all. But I think he was kind of middle-ish of the pack in terms of F1 drivers, and I think he's been above average over in F1. Similar to how I feel about Marcus Ericsson. Marcus
Okay.
Ericsson was a middle F1 and has been above average in IndyCar. I think I said F1 for Grosjean, but I meant above
I know what
average
you
in
meant. I know
IndyCar.
what you meant.
So with Latifi, he has been a staple of last place for the past few years outside of some Mazepin here and there. And so I think this is where my intrigue is. And so we've compared a little bit the way that like super license points and everything are counted for IndyCar compared to F1. We've seen guys like Fernando Alonso go over to IndyCar. We've seen Marcus Ericsson, Roman Grosjean, and whatnot. I want to see how good is Nick Latifi in IndyCar. Like, is he going to be a back of the pack F1 guy and then be middle of the pack in IndyCar? Is he going to be back of the pack in F1 and then back of the pack in IndyCar? Is he going to be back in F1 and like above average? Like, I don't know, and that's why I'm curious, because it's like every time we have one of these crossovers, it gives us a little more insight into like and some like intrigue into those conversations of, oh, best guy in IndyCar, what if he hops over to F1? Like, how do we think he would do? Each like new data point, especially in a different area of the field from F1, I think gives us a better idea of like the comparative strength of each series. So
Yeah.
I find that interesting. And so I will probably be looking out for Nick Latifi and how he does in IndyCar a lot next year. Not necessarily because I'm a big fan of his, like I initially joked about, but
Sure.
I am very curious because this is like it's an interesting situation that I don't feel like we've really seen as much in F1. Like Ericsson and Grosjean, I would say, were both relatively middle of the pack. So I think this will be kind of a new entry in the data.
Yeah, or it could just be, you know, the halfway house to Nicholas Latifi just like flipping burgers somewhere
Hey,
and just having flashbacks to that wall.
at least we're getting him closer to home in Canada by
Yeah, I hear
sending him
you.
over into the U.S. for IndyCar.
I hear that.
So yeah, looking forward to seeing that. I think it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. One of the other teams that has been that has struggled over the past year, we mentioned Haas, but they are one expecting to announce a major sponsor in America this weekend, so that could be really good for their financial position. Obviously, after dropping Mazepin, they lost a ton of money from the sponsorship and all that Mazepin's dad was providing with that Russian oil money. So a new sponsor for Haas, that's exciting because I think we've seen them take steps forward, but I'm sure even though there's a cost cap, I know not every team is able to push to that point. So
Right.
seeing them bring that in to be able to improve the car and hopefully continue to improve their position at all, I think that gives more opportunities for what drivers they end up having in the seats, whether it ends up being Mick and Magnussen or potentially someone else. Apparently, Nico Hulkenberg, there is a report that he and Haas have been discussing a comeback. So there's that talk. And then Gunter Steiner also said that the door at Haas is open for Daniel Ricciardo. He said, for us, he would be a big hit. I rate him as a driver. But he also said, I'm not going to chase him down. And so I'm not holding out hope that Danny Ricks is going to end up staying in F1, but potentially a new sponsorship that shows some promise financially for the organization and potential movement up the constructor standings could potentially appeal to a number of different drivers that are looking,
Right.
whether it's Mick, Hulk, Danny Ricks, whoever they end up having in that seat next to Magnussen for next year. I think it makes it a little more interesting.
I think having as far as name recognition goes, with Seb Vettel leaving, I think it's interesting to have the Schumacher name on the grid. That's not my idea, but that's just an interesting idea that I heard. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. Well, oh, man.
I mean, I wouldn't hate Mick being around at least one more season personally,
Yeah.
just because I feel like he hasn't gotten a phenomenal opportunity to really prove himself in a way. This year, to some extent, yes, but last year, he was in a shit car. That car was
Yeah.
absolute garbage,
I
and
don't know. I think I actually disagree. I think he's had enough Q2 entrances and like decent enough races where he's like battling for a points finish that I actually think he's a little more than you're giving credit to.
well, no, I'm not. I don't think poorly of Mick at all. I just
Sure.
mean in the scheme of things, like I am trying not to have an implicit bias based on his last name, which is tough with his
Right.
last name.
Right.
But I do think it would be fair to give him another shot because, yeah, well, and I feel like in this year's car, what I mean by he hasn't been able to fully like prove himself is that it's still not a great car.
Yeah,
Like
it's not like he's
there's
in like a McLaren or
the,
an Alpine or whatever.
yeah, or just the fact that the car has been inconsistent throughout the year. I mean, they came
Okay.
out and had some really strong starts, but then they lagged behind because they didn't bring any upgrades and things like that. And he's just kind of bounced around, but shown like promising performances at different points. So I agree with you. Like, I definitely like do think that he's deserving of another shot. It's just whether or not Haas decides to go with that. I don't know if Hulkenberg is a more promising person to put into that seat. I feel like I'd rather give Mick a shot. The Daniel Ricciardo thing is the part that makes it a little shakier for me, because I do feel like Danny Ricks is, even though he's fallen off, I still think pretty highly of him as a driver, and as a personality, Haas probably it might be a toss up. It might just be performance versus performance with the two, because the Daniel Ricciardo brand or the Mick Schumacher last name, I think both bring eyes to the team. So
There was an article that came out about like a week ago or so. Dan Ricciardo says he won't be racing in Formula One next season, but was setting
okay.
sights on a 2024 return.
Yeah, I thought that he had said that, but I didn't know if, like I said, I mean, there have been people change their minds. I
Sure,
think
sure.
potentially with,
I just wanted you to
oh
have the
yeah,
most up to date info.
definitely. I think with the announcement of the new sponsorship, if that does seem appealing, that could pique curiosities.
Wow, yeah.
But
You're
most
teasing the
like,
folks too much. I have to spill the tea.
most likely he's not going to be an F1. But I do find it interesting because Gunter just did that interview the other day as well. That he was like,
Right,
"Hey, doors open if you want it." So,
right.
but moving along towards
Oh
the,
wait, you're not
oh,
gonna let me tell the people who the new sponsor is gonna be?
oh wait, do you have that information? Give it to the
Dude,
people.
your surprise, your fake surprise is amazing. The Tall and Short of It podcast is going to be the new title sponsor. Our name is going to be everywhere, up in lights. We are the new Haas. We're going to be giving them all the monies.
Yep, tall and short of it, Haas or Haas, Ferrari, tall and short of it.
Hell yeah.
Is that like Red Bull, RBPT, Oracle, or whatever the fuck it is? Is that how that goes?
We'll have to work out the naming, but I'm definitely going to pull for ours to be ahead of everybody else's. That's for sure.
Tall and short of it, Haas, Ferrari.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that. That's super
No,
good.
that
But yeah,
was.
yeah, we can move on now.
But moving in, we've got 4 races to go. The
Yeah.
battle for second place is the one that is the most contested currently. We've got 207 points for George Russell, 202 points for Carlos Sainz,
Hmm.
252 for Charles Leclerc, and 253 for Sergio Perez. So Russell and Sainz are still mathematically possible to catch up, unlikely without some DNFs from the sides of Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, but definitely a tightly contested battle there, leading into the U.S. Grand Prix this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think P2 matters unless it is like really hotly contested where the opponent is like embroiled in the storyline some way. Like, you know, they went into the last race even, that kind of thing. Like last year, like EDG won the world championship. I can't remember who they played like off the top of my head. Really, history only remembers the winner. So yeah, for the drivers' championship, unfortunately, just that silver medal to be chasing. But yeah, still up for grabs is pretty cool for them
Yeah, and
because
it,
it
it
still does factor in sponsorship money and all that.
oh, and it factors into the constructors championship and all as
Yeah,
well. So like with the constructors, that could end up being closed out this week, I believe, with that being finalized. But Sergio, I think, being in the lead in that driver's second place standings is very interesting because, of course, all of the conversation was all about Max and Charles throughout the season. Checo was playing third fiddle at best, maybe. I think a lot of conversation, of course, passes even past that to
Sure.
Lewis and Mercedes and whatnot. So I think it
I mean,
would be
George has had a
very
great season.
George too. Yeah, I mean,
Mm,
it would be very cool to see Checo get second in the standings and all after putting in some really consistently good performances throughout the season. Getting a win the other week or a couple of races ago now. And so I think that is the exciting part, more just seeing how that shakes out as opposed to the meaningfulness necessarily of it in terms of the history books. But Constructors Championship still up for grabs, at least at this point. So yeah, I'm looking forward forward to the Grand Prix this week. We've got normal times for races. I will have to hopefully make sure that actually this is perfect. The Eagles are on a bye this week, so Sunday afternoon is completely open. So we're
there you
good.
go.
Beautiful.
There
So
you go. Yeah, having it in the Eastern time zone is pretty nice. The 1 a.m. Japanese start was definitely an interesting one. So it's fun to be on our side of the pond here. But yeah, we had a thinking back to last year's race while Aaron opens up a drink. I'm just gonna talk the people through some 2021 race shenanigans. If you can see him on the camera, I think he's going to grab a towel. Yep, he's spilled a whole bunch of beer. That's unfortunate. It's all over the keyboard. It's all over his mouse. He's leaking guts everywhere. Damn, that's big unfortunate. We just can't get away from the liquids here at the Tall and Short of It podcast.
man,
I'm gonna
that
have to
beer
keep him
and
out of the garage. He can't be spilling that on our Haas F1 car. So you better keep his beer out of the garage. We don't want
yeah, it's brutal.
any shenanigans going
That
on.
one's just been
But
sitting
yeah,
there for a
if you
while.
remember last year's race, it was pretty it was pretty okay. Lewis started P2 behind Max, got the jump off the line. He goes like, just off into the distance, and then Max pits first for I guess it's called the undercut, and then they just kind of traded tires a couple of times, and then Lewis gets close. Here in my notes, I have an inevitable Lewis because he ends up like closing down the distance pretty good. But yeah, it wasn't able to catch up. So the podium last year was Max, Lewis, and Sergio. Again, another pretty good performance from Sergio. I know racers kind of enjoy Circuit of the Americas. So there could be some difference to be made there. Just thinking of good performances. Lewis has had a strong run of races here. Obviously, he's won a whole bunch of times. But yeah, I think it should be an interesting race overall. I think last year the biggest storyline for me, as I just keep steamrolling through this, as Aaron is working on his beer. One of my favorite moments from last year's race was the McLarens. They were on the first lap, kind of all over Carlos Sainz's gearbox. Daniel Ricciardo was like racing him pretty hard with Lando Norris closely behind. So I think the McLarens had a great showing last year, and we'll see what they can do this year. But yeah, overall, it wasn't like a crazy race. Not a whole lot happened. There were some like taps on lap one, but other than that, it was pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I loved seeing Daniel Ricciardo do well, especially at Circuit of the Americas, because he takes very um, strongly to the U.S. and the cowboy thing. He's probably been wearing a cowboy hat all week long. Like he loves
Working
it
on that
here.
accent.
He has a great like I think great following in the U.S. Of most drivers, and so he always enjoys being in the U.S. for Grand Prix from any account that I've seen. So looking forward to that. But yeah, in general, I think it'll be interesting to see the race, whether we get some different tire strategies because of temperatures. I believe last year the biggest thing was it was really hot, and so there were some teams that played that out differently, like you said, with Max and Lewis kind of taking alternative strategies, with Max ending up coming out on top. But I think that kind of covers our preview a little bit. But I am very excited to be able to watch in our time zone, and just let me, like, you don't have to hook up the drink in my car. I'll be like Kimmy, no drink. Just let me drive the Haas. don't don't ban me from the garage. You don't have to give me any drink. Just let me take a spin.
I think that garage pass has just been revoked for all time. That's some shenanigans that we can't deal with.
Brutal.
But some shenanigans that North America was not going to deal with was going out 0-18. Our proud boys, ended up getting one win each. One for Cloud9, one for 100 Thieves, and one for the evil geniuses. So they did not go down without fighting, obviously, but yeah, rough showing.
I mean, it was
My predictions are totally out the window now.
it's pretty oh, so are mine. I mean, mine were gone,
Yeah,
but
but you actually had good guesses. Mine were troll.
yeah, I mean, but if it's troll, it doesn't really matter. So
That's a good point. Continue.
doesn't count. Um, but yes, America came out 3-15, beautiful record year after year. We go back to Worlds, and year after year we're disappointed. Um, I and like even looking at it, I don't know if there was a better group that like NA could have ended. Maybe the group with DRX and Rogue would have been slightly better for the NA teams, but the teams that made it out of the groups this year look very, very strong pretty much across the board. So although I am of course disappointed a little bit with NA, I do this is, I guess, the copium coming into play, but like there's a lot of younger talent and growth that can happen with some of the teams. Cloud9, for instance, it's Sven's first season as a support. Berserker is still pretty fresh to the international stage. There's just some room to grow and improve there. With Evil Geniuses, there's definitely room there to improve. Overall, like JoJo looked fantastic, coming out and playing and all. Like he is such a talented player. He's very young, so there are like positives to take away from NA's performance. But looking at the teams that are going to be moving forward, Group 1, T1 comes in first, EDG comes in second there, Fnatic third, Cloud9 fourth. Fnatic struggled in week 2 after starting out slightly better than NA. But T1, especially as they got to the end stages of that group, looked very, very strong. 4-game win streak to wrap out the group, only losing to EDG in that first round. Or was it Fnatic? T1 lost to, only losing to Fnatic, 2-0ing Cloud9 and EDG. So they came in very strong at the end, so I am looking for them to kind of continue that performance moving into into the best of series and the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's interesting for T1. Um, it seems like they're playing a different style than both DRX and Gen.G, the two of the other Korean teams that got out. Damwon Kia also moving out of their groups in Group B. I think there are some like pick and ban similarities and some playstyle similarities, but overall, T1 right now is like doing like the pick skirmish comps really well, and it seems like that style is working. We'll see what kind of moves forward in the best of fives, but yeah, I think right now T1 looks pretty good. And obviously you can't really fault them for like dropping a game early on the first day. Obviously, like nobody's infallible. Even Gen.G dropped a game, who we is one of the tournament favorites. JDG dropped a game, who is another one of the tournament favorites. And so early in the meta as well, like as far
Right.
as the knockout stages go, or as far as the group stages go. I mean, fair enough. Kudos to Fnatic. Like their 2-4 record is actually it's actually pretty solid compared to the other squads. So I think they showed up best against like the international competition overall, as far as Western team goes. But yeah, for Group A, T1 and EDG getting out, not a big surprise.
Yeah. And
But
looking like you said about T1's play style comparatively, we saw Fnatic, we saw EDG. I'd say Cloud9 to a lesser extent, kind of defaulting towards these towards the general meta. We see the Akali coming out for EDG and for Fnatic in a couple of games. We see Faker consistently go for that Silas. He didn't follow Scout with the Lysandra pick in the last game of the day and went for the Victor. But they're going for more carry top laners on Zeus. They've gone for the Jace. They've gone for the Gangplank, the Yone, and so I think that's the biggest variation is that they've had the ability to shift that top lane and not just say, oh, we get an Aatrox matchup or we go tank. They're going for these other picks that are a little outside of the standard, and I think that gives them a little bit of a leg up in general going into the play in or into the quarterfinals because we end up, or I guess would it be quarterfinals or semifinals?
seeded
Quarterfinals.
into
Yeah.
the quarterfinals. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
playing RNG.
Sorry, brain. So going into the quarterfinals, having that, I'm sure they have the ability to play the normal meta, but to have these other picks that they can opt into makes the pick ban phase even that much more difficult. And they're against RNG, so that's going to be a matchup that could easily go to 5 games, where you could have to pick a number of different play styles and run through different ways of winning to come out on top in that series.
Yeah, no, it makes sense that T1 is playing such a dynamic top lane. I've heard a couple people say it, and I think I might agree. Now, I didn't see every game in depth. I don't have pages of notes on every single player or whatnot. But I think Zeus was definitely the MVP of the group stage for me. I think he was the most exciting player to watch in T1 currently. So it's no surprise that they're putting him on these very dynamic like carry champions. Both the Jace and the Gangplank are standouts for me. I think that's pretty dope. Seeing if we'll see those moving into the group stages. But then just thinking of the opposite for Xiaohu, like it does not appear to me like they are really going to be contesting picks. The only thing might be the Akali and the Lissandra, but otherwise the mid lane matchup could be pretty wide open.
Yeah, I would imagine the Akali becomes the primary like contested pick.
Yeah,
I don't imagine. So if Lissandra gets picked by Zhao Hu, Faker's probably going Azir. Like it's
sure.
not going to be something that I think Faker is going to be aggressively trying to contest. So I think the Akali would be the only one. Um, but I do expect the top lane to like picks to have a decent bit of impact on playstyle, but the bottom lane, how you said, Zeus might have been your MVP. I think that Guma was probably, at least for Group A, the MVP in my opinion.
Hmm.
He had just some unreal performances. Him and Kyria were so in sync in that bot lane. They played just a number of different comps and matchups. So
Yeah, Lucian Nami looked really
the
well. Or looked
Lushinami
really good.
was amazing. They played Sivir Yumi. They played Soraka, Callista, and in general, I mean, Guma didn't die in the second week of their group. Kyria went a combined like 2-1 and 27 or something stupid like that, or 2-1 and 43.
Hmm.
So just
Holy shit.
phenomenal play from the bot lane there, and I think that that is probably what they'll rely on more. Most likely trying to get Faker on the Silas because of the ability for that to be so strong in the 1v1, but also the ability to use that for the ultimate and stealing other teams' ultimates. Looking into Group B, we saw that from JDG, I believe, in their one of their last games, or I might be mixing them up, um, but
Yeah, JDG had Silas against Damwon Gaming in their tiebreaker on the last or on their day.
yeah. So the Silas pick was a big one for JDG, and Yagao was really utilizing that well, stealing the ultimates.
Yeah, because in
JDG
that game you have
winning
the
that
Maokai
tiebreaker.
ultimate looks really good. You have the Leona ult which looks really good. And I think that's like what you're looking for in the Silas pick is like how many ults on the other team do you realistically have to steal and like how impactful are they? And then probably secondary, like what's the lane matchup? Yeah, and then like I talked over what you were saying, JDG ended
Oh
up winning that game.
no, 100%. And I think that it is so impactful, and in the current meta, it's even more so. There are very
Mm.
few times that I think you'll end up with a team comp on the other side where there are not good ultimates to steal. Whether it's the Maokai ultimate, the Leona ultimate, Yigao stealing that as they were kind of pushing down the Damwon Gaming base in the mid lane, stealing the Leona ultimate, locking up Diakdom, and just wiping from that point forward to end the game
Hmm.
was huge. And so whether it's, I mean, just in that game, if you end up with a Maokai ultimate, a Leona ultimate, or if you get the Silas on the other side and get a Nautilus ultimate, a Vi ultimate, those are like, there are so many champions that have strong ults to steal in the current meta, and so
Hmm.
Silas I think is going to be a really big pick that we'll get to continue to see going into the best of series. But like you were
Yeah, for
saying,
sure.
JDG, Damwon go to the tiebreaker. JDG comes out on top there. But I think the thing that impressed me the most about JDG, which concerns me for other teams is that they lost that game, the last game of the day against Damwon, pretty hard, and then
Mm-hmm.
immediately go into the tiebreaker and just come back, battle it out, and get the win. So there was no mental issues of, oh, we just lost. They bounced back immediately. There was no other game in between, no break really. They had their 15 minutes to step off and then ran it back and played a very, very strong game to take that tiebreaker.
Yeah, which tells us JD Gaming likely will not have too many issues once it comes to the best of fives, which they'll be up against Rogue in their first quarterfinal series. But yeah, pretty unsurprising there for JDG and Damwon Gaming. Obviously, just the tiebreaker there to decide who gets first seed and who gets second seed. But yeah, think Group B pretty reasonable result there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just to kind of keep going on the player that we maybe was the MVP, I would say for JDG at least it was 369. I don't know if you would say he was the best player in the group for the entirety of the 2 weeks, but he came on very strong at the end. Had some really solid performances on the Fiora, the Renekton,
Hmm.
and then on the Aatrox in that tiebreaker game. So definitely a good person to keep your eye on in those matchups. But moving into Group C, we had, like you said, Rogue and then DRX that ended up coming out on top. But outside of those two, I was also just very impressed with Top Esports and their play. They pick up a win off of both Rogue and DRX as their last two games of the group to go 3 and
Yep.
3. It was a bummer because Jackie Love was popping off, and I was watching and I'm like, man, I would love to see more of that. So I'm just gonna have to go watch Top Esports in the LPL.
Yeah, we may just have to become LPL fans. Did you hear in the Top Esports versus Gam game? Did you hear about what happened with the base race and the Lucian bug?
No, I did not.
So apparently the Karth assault that went off like right at the end, apparently that his Maul Malmortius went on cooldown, but it didn't trigger, it didn't give him the shield, so he just ended up dying. And it would have been like he would have been alive for the amount of auto attacks that like the Nexus needed. So there's
I
like a
didn't
big
realize that because
kerfuffle.
I saw the end.
Yeah,
Like I watched the game through and saw
super exciting.
yeah, crazy. Like to push down, be like we can end, and then to be left with what, like 3 hits probably on the Nexus
Yeah,
at the end,
yeah.
like
It was like a sliver.
brutal.
Or I guess sliver is disingenuous. It was like a minor chunk, I would call it.
Yeah, like 3 Lucian hits would probably like a hit auto and a double tap off of a,
Right?
yeah, that's probably gone. But I
Brutal.
didn't realize that there was controversy over it because I like since I've been watching a lot of the games after the fact, I
Right.
don't watch as much post game analysis or like I didn't see anything
Well,
online.
I'm pretty sure it was some Twitter detectives that figured it out like a couple days later. But by this point, like the games are over, it's all done. They would have to fly people back in or
Chrono break.
whatever. Right, right. They would have like it would have been a big redo. So yeah, unfortunate about the bug because I think that actually might have been the difference between, Top Esports, being out of the group.
Well, and that
Obviously,
would have
so
thrown a 3-way tiebreaker, which would have been
exactly.
interesting.
That that's what makes it such kind of like a crux game for it to happen on because it would have shifted the group like either way. But just big time unfortunate for Top Esports. 3 and 3 is like the most commendable record of the teams that are getting knocked out.
Oh
So
yeah.
even with that like unfortunate loss, yeah, I think they had a decent run at the tournament. It's just a shame, and this was brought to my attention. It's a shame that it seemed like the bottom lane was kind of up and down between Jackie Love and
Mark.
what's his
Well,
support name?
Mark.
Mark, gotcha. So yeah, it just seemed like their performance was a little up and down, and depending on the champion pick, you weren't sure which Jackie Love you were gonna get.
Yeah.
So just like a little food for thought there, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. It was when really they started focusing on giving like the power to the bot lane that it seemed to switch the most for them.
Hmm.
Going for like the Lucian Nami in the bot lane a couple of times, and then the Draven Blitzcrank. The like that was a beat down from top esports onto Rogue in that matchup. Like
Hmm.
watching Jackie Love at the end of the game, or even the beginning of the game, like getting the double kill, I think, under first turret in the bot lane. He's just chunking with those Draven axes. So it it's definitely a bummer to see because I think that they have the talent to compete, but that's the way the world championships kind of go. Like
Sure.
sometimes things shake out your way, but looking at
Sometimes there's a
DR,
game breaking bug.
yeah, I mean, and it's stuff that could happen to anyone, and like it
Yeah.
could have gone completely unnoticed as
Yep.
well. Like you
You got it.
obviously don't want that to happen, but at the same time, it there are always going to be things. I mean, there's 185 champions or however many now. It's probably like 160, but uh, there's a lot that goes into the game,
Sure.
and so I don't know if that like in that situation going for it to try and end like they could have taken the inhibs, backed off, tried to like
Hmm.
it's not something that it it could have easily gone the way it did with or without the bug. Like it would be tough to say 100%. So
Yeah.
looking at it, and kind of looking at how the group ended up shaking out, DRX definitely looked like the stronger of the two coming out of the group at the end there. Rogue slumped decently in the second week, losing their last two games, going 1-2 in the second week. So I am definitely a little worried for Rogue going into the JDG matchup. I think JDG is a very good team, but I also think
Yeah.
that Rogue was kind of struggling down the stretch towards the end there. So I'm hoping that they can kind of get themselves together, but I think some of their drafting was a little bit concerning. Just going outside the standard a bit too far. The NASA support has not looked strong, and then going with the Caitlyn Lux, which of course does have that range and all against the Blitzcrank Draven, but just didn't end up getting as strong as you need to.
Right.
So I think that it would be better to go for some more just generally strong bot lanes as opposed
Hmm.
to trying to counterpick, for instance, into that position. But they've got the cards stacked against them, in my opinion, going into the best of series with JDG.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one for Rogue, for sure. They, obviously have done a lot of good work up until this point, but yeah, like you were saying, the slump on week two is a little bit concerning. Um, hopefully though, they just continue to maybe take a look at some of the mistakes that they did, take a look at their draft, and come in strong with a plan for JDG. Individually, I think all the players are strong, but overall, I think JDG is just a force to be reckoned with. And
Yeah.
if that's going to be enough, plus like the Malrang factor, I strongly doubt it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to play their absolute best, but JDG is definitely not unbeatable. they
Nope.
came with a loss into the quarterfinals. So
Yeah.
there is the potential, but I think it is definitely favored towards JDG. But looking at Group D now, we ended up with Gen.G and RNG coming out of the top of that, tied at 5-1. Gen.G only losing that very first game that they had against RNG at the end of day one, going 6-0 after that with the tiebreaker to come out on top of the group and looking very much the dominant Gen.G that I was expecting coming into the World Championships.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, they got drawn Damwon Kia, which of all the teams in the, of all the teams left, Gen.G has a terrible record against.
Yeah, well, it's definitely. I think the way that the groups drew out makes it pretty exciting, I hope at least. Like, I feel like we've gotten a lot of good first round matchups as opposed to having like we're getting two China versus Korea, a EU versus China, and then the one Korea versus Korea matchup. And I feel like that will allow the semifinals and finals to have a little more parity potentially than what we sometimes see with, like, say if T1 and JDG ended up against each other somehow,
Right.
or Gen.G and JDG, and you're seeing
Having
like
top teams on
the
the same side of the
immediate
bracket.
favorites just because of maybe dropping a game here or there end up like wiping each other out. Yeah, we've got strength on kind of every side of the bracket, so I think that definitely makes it interesting. But yeah, Gen.G against Damwon with the head-to-head matchup. Do you know what that was during the regular season?
I'm pretty sure. Well, I shouldn't say I'm pretty sure. I think it's Damwon in their most recent best of meetings. I think Damwon has him like 0-2 or something.
Okay.
Where recently in their matchups, Damwon has been getting the better of Gen.G, so they're kind of like a little bit of a kryptonite, which is super interesting. Looking at one of the tournament favorites, and I mean the group stages, they went 5-1, only had a problem with RNG, and like you said, just went on an absolute tear. And yeah, it's just interesting where I think any other team that they would have got matched up against, you could have leaned heavily in the favor of Gen.G, but I think just looking at those previous matchups, you would say like, oh well, Damwon definitely has a chance here,
Yeah.
regardless of in tournament strength.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Just from his historical performance, because that's the only one that we can really pull that from. It's the only
Yeah,
matchup that has the same region in it. So definitely will be interesting to see how both of those teams do. But Gen.G
sure.
like just looked so strong throughout the second week and going into these quarterfinals. Chovy played a number of different styles. He played the Silas. He played the Akali. He played, I mean, well, played Silas twice, so maybe not too many styles, but looked very, very strong. Their drafting, I think, was just overall kind of one of their big keys to their victories in their matchup against 100 Thieves. Just the comp that they got with the Lucian, Nami, the Silas, and the Maokai was just so difficult for 100 Thieves to even find a way to get through that. Um,
I also think the jungle graves is a big factor for Gen.G specifically, with their Peanut really enjoying the really enjoying the carry junglers. I think Graves is just going to be a terrifying pick for Gen.G. I don't want to say like a must ban or whatever, but just something to think about coming out of the jungle. So to
Mm,
your point, each role that they drafted was a like an S tier or S plus tier pick, and just put them all together.
yeah, and I think the other good side of it is even though Doran wasn't being put on the typical like carry picks. Like he played very well on the tanks. He played very well on the Maokai. He played very well on the Gragas. But then coming out and showing the other side and playing Renekton in the last game of the week against RNG and playing that pretty well in a tough matchup against the Gangplank, not going too far down, playing the weak side very well. And then on to the Camille, like he's shown good performance on both the carries as well as the tanks, and so I think
Hmm.
that's a nice positive to be able to continue to feel that kind of solidity from Doran in the top lane where like
Sure.
you can focus on Ruler and Lehens in the bot lane and focus more on the bot side of the map because I feel like that's where they're able to push a lot of their victories from
Hmm.
with that duo in the bot lane. They look very very strong. I would ban out either Lucian or well probably Lucian. You don't want to ban Nami. That would be kind of a waste because that duo for them has looked just as strong as anyone in the tournament.
Yeah, and just thinking about the other side of the matchup where even RNG will be looking for the Lucian Nami, so like you were saying, may be worth a ban there. That could be a little contested duo as well. We're seeing Xiaohu still want to look at the Galio pick. I think that's going to be pretty strong, especially against Peanut, who wants to make so many moves. It's going to give Xiaohu a good amount of agency in the lane to answer any of the pressure coming out of Peanut. On these really aggressive junglers. Just thinking of Graves and Vi specifically, being that Vi has risen to popularity, not risen, but has
She's
maintained
decently popular. Yeah,
popularity.
she's like
Yeah,
in. She's a common jungle pick
yeah.
and fits the meta decently well.
I was unsure when we first started to see her crop up, but she's staying pretty evergreen. Her engages seem to be pretty reliable and consistent. The flanking options that you get from her are pretty interesting as well. So yeah, seems fine to me. But yeah, I just think a lot of interesting angles in the Gen.G RNG series. To my eyes, that's definitely going to all 5 games. I'm gonna edge it towards, or what am I talking about? No, I was just talking about the Gen.G RNG game
But looking at the Gen.G
from
Damwon
groups.
matchup going into the
That's right.
quarterfinals, I
That's
think
so
that
lost.
is no, it's all good. They had basically best of series right at the end of their day. So
Yeah.
leading into their quarterfinal matchup, I agree. I think Gen.G and Damwon is going to be a very competitive series. I think both teams looked pretty strong at the end of their individual groups in the main stage. So I
Hmm.
like we said, Gen.G going 6-0 with the tiebreaker at the end, and then Damwon going 4-1 in their last games, including the tiebreaker. It definitely is a strong matchup, and like you said as well, a matchup that we've seen throughout the LCK split that's been pretty Damwon favored at least at the most recent matches.
Yeah. So it seems like we're set up for a couple of good quarterfinal matches. I think 3 out of the 4 are going to be like pretty competitive. Hopefully 3-1s or 3-2s. unfortunately for Rogue, I think that one's going to be a 3-0 in favor of JDG. I'll be, pleasantly surprised if that's not what happens. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the quarterfinals and a good amount of best of fives here on the horizon.
Yeah, so lots of good games that we will have this weekend. I guess it would be.
Yep,
So
the
starting
start of anyway.
tomorrow, at least, we have JDG versus Rogue. So looking forward to it. But any final League of Legends notes, World Championship notes before we move right along?
No, anything else I would add would just be complaints. We can probably just let me sprinkle a little bit of magic on here, and then we can get the folks out of here.
Sounds good. Um, so, what has been going on with the Magic scene? Did you get in games with Commander 9? Did you get in games with any of the other pods? What's been going on?
I was invited to some games on Sunday with Death of the Veil of Death MTG channel on YouTube. Reached out on it was like Saturday, I guess. Reached out on Saturday looking to put a pod together, and I was happy to oblige him. I was the mono red deck in a group of like 3 color decks, I believe. Couple of different color combos, all super interesting. Just some small notes here, mainly on like what hands I kept, kind of how the games went. Um, First game, I was able to present a win pretty quickly, got stopped, went to a different player. No worries there. Second game, though, I put back my first hand, my first 7 cards to draw my second 7, and I had an opening a blood moon in my opening hand with a bunch of mana to be able to run it out and cast it. And so blood moon is 2 and a red for an enchantment that says non-basic lands are mountains. So anything that is not a basic land can only tap for red mana. So anything else that it is, any other type, anything else that it says, any activated abilities, they're all gone. It turns all of those non-basic lands into mountains.
Okay.
So in the pod that I was with, I had three color decks as my opponents. So they're going to be playing a lot of dual lands, a lot of 5 color lands that are notably non basics. So I believe I was starting player. So I kept the Blood Moon. And in the pod, I was convinced that it was going to be like just backbreaking and was going to get me the advantage that my opening hand didn't have. The Blood Moon ended up being countered when I cast it, so my strategy moving forward wasn't that strong. But just to comment on like thinking of cards in my hand and like what I was up against, I still think it was a strong keep. Opponent just had the answer.
Yeah.
But based on who my opponents were and where I was in the pod, I think it was a fine keep, and no love lost or anything like that. Just in the I know we've talked about mulliganing and what I'm learning as I'm playing these games, and just that was something that came up where it's like, oh, like I did assess this scenario correctly, even though the in-game action didn't go that way.
Yeah.
Like you still used the right decision-making process and like carried it out efficiently, I think.
Yeah, and I think
So I
in
thought that was interesting.
sometimes with Magic, it's just the draw of the cards. You
Oh
took
yeah,
what you thought would give you a good opportunity without mulliganing, going to another hand, and potentially not having anything. You were like, at least I have a way to start this game out and hopefully get the ball rolling, and then hopefully draw other cards I would need down
sure.
the line. So yeah, it sounds like a smart decision to kind of take that and look to go forward with it. I think that's kind of sounds like the key is like looking and seeing if there is any strategy out of the cards that you have, as opposed to looking for the specific combos or the specific cards to just be like, is there something here,
Right.
and going from there.
Yeah, and that was kind of my next note, where it's learning that the deck has a couple of different game plans. Obviously, you don't want to like jam pack it full of ideas. It looks to do one thing really well, and then it has a couple of pieces that can like pivot the game plan just a tiny bit. And I think that Blood Moon is one of those, where I'm sure you can make an argument for like that to be swapped out for something that enhances the main plan better. But I think in the overall competitive meta, there are enough 3, 4, and 5 color decks that it would just hose them. Like if that landed, it almost would have been a okay, like we just scoop. Like
Well,
it's
yeah.
over.
So I was gonna say, does it? So this isn't just like making all of your non or your lands mountains.
It's everybody. It's a global
Oh,
effect.
so you could fuck someone real hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
Especially
so
if they
think
don't have
of
red in their deck. Like, they would just be screwed. So, yeah, no, definitely a good card. I initially was thinking it was like, you're like, oh, it turns all my, like, special, what are they called? What are the lands?
non-basic lands.
Non-basic lands uh, into mountains, and then my mind was like, oh, he's got fucking dwarves or some shit that are gonna be like the mountain men that are gonna like get to spawn based on how many mountain lands you have or something like that.
That would be a cute effect, probably not
Well,
strong enough for those games, but no, it
you
it
have
it, it
there are
does show
plenty
off the
of
opponent.
yeah, there are plenty of commander decks though that you've talked about that have like a oh, like this card does this and it boosts your like gets you to a storm count or things
Sure,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like I was kind of imagining it being like or like a dragon deck where you try to have all of your things trying to spawn little like 1/1 baby dragons or some shit.
Oh, that'd be sweet, actually.
So it makes more sense now, and I think that's a great contingency kind of plan to have available in a deck. Like for one card, that sounds like a no brainer.
Yeah, definitely would hose some of the more popular strategies going on. So I was happy to see that show up in game two. And I think overall, what I'm learning is that to, like you had said, take a critical look at the hand, see is there like a playable line forward. And just like in game three, sometimes unfortunately you just have to take what you're given, because the deck is built a little land light. Sometimes you'll see hands show up with no lands in them. I had to go to a 4 card hand in game three, and that you just kind of feel like you're out of it. I think the 4 that I had was decent, but pretty sure opponent won very quickly into the game anyway. So like it really wouldn't have mattered what I had. But yeah, just overall a fun bunch of games. Just want to shout out Death Magic. Thanks again for the invites. Always have a good time. So we're just some quick little Magic sprinklings here for the week. But Aaron, tell me about your flavor of the week. Tell me what you got going on.
Sounds good. So for my flavor of the week for my food, Colleen this past weekend made some chili. We're getting into soup season a bit more, so I'm sure you are excited with all the good soups that Sarah makes. But as
Got
it
chicken noodle
gets
out there right now.
yeah, as it gets cooler out, we enjoy going for some different soups and whatnot. So the chili
Nice.
was really good. That's not like my favorite kind of cooking either. So I like that Colleen enjoys doing those because for me, I like being able to like do everything like at once and cook things and you got this pan going and that pan going and she's like, oh, I just have to chop a bunch of stuff up, throw it in the crock pot with some broth, and like 6 hours later we've got a meal. Like
Hmm.
dope. And so it's kind of cool that we balance each other on that. Um, my music for this week is a playlist on Spotify called Cherry/Wine, and I came across it on TikTok. It was described as a sad cowboy playlist, and so It's like folky, slow, like a little different than what I usually listen to. But I've been enjoying that a little bit. Found a couple of songs that I'll probably throw on some of my other playlists and whatnot. But
Nice.
as the fall comes, the vibes kind of slow down for me a little bit from the poppy, fun summertime stuff. So I came across that. I'm like, I'll give it a shot. And so I've been enjoying it. Like skip songs here and there, but overall a pretty good playlist. And for my visual medium, so Colleen and I just finished up the show Last Man on Earth that we had been watching, and I have some beef. Colleen, I know you will hear this, so and I've already like said this to her anyway.
Sure.
But like, the show wasn't finished. She had me watch 4 seasons of a show, fully expecting that there is a conclusion at the end of the show, and it got canceled after the 4th season.
Brutal.
With no conclusion, like a huge cliffhanger. She's watched the whole show before, and she like did not lead into that going, hey, like I did it with Hunter x Hunter or Hunter, whatever you want to call it, for one of my buddies who was curious about the anime, and I was like, well, it's not really finished, like it kind of leaves a lot of loose ends at the end of it. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to watch anything that's not finished.
Right.
I mean, I may have still watched the show anyway, but I'd like to go into it knowing that the show ends with a giant cliffhanger that will never be resolved outside of a couple Reddit posts where people talked about what they like, where characters or writers were like, well, this is kind of the idea we were going with. Like, I don't want that. I want to see a finished show. Right. So I'm a little miffed at that, because it was not just like 4 10-episode seasons. It was like 4 18-episode seasons of this show.
Ain't nobody got time for that, bro.
And I watched all the way through it. And then it got to the end, and I was like, that's it? She's like, yeah, I forgot. But then I realized, like, a few episodes ago that that's how it ends. And I'm like, what? You've watched this whole thing before. How do you not remember that it doesn't actually end?
That's really tough.
So, small beef, but overall, I enjoyed the show a lot, which is why I was bummed out that it wasn't finished. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I want to know. But that was my flavor of the week. What have you had going on for the people, Justin?
Small beef, big chicken over here. My visual medium for the week, Sarah introduced me to one of her Halloween favorites. It's an old cartoon. I think it's from like 1957 or something. I believe it's called A Witch's Night. It is this kooky, I mean kooky animation of 2 kids that have like kind of a like shitty Halloween, and a real live witch comes and like scoops them up and is like, nah, this is what Halloween's all about, shows them a really good time, and like spooks the townspeople. And I like, there are some moments where I just like cannot look away from the thing. Like, I'm on.
Is it Witch's Night Out?
Yeah, it's probably Witch's Night Out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the monster a big orange like fuzzball head?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all just like blobby animation.
Yeah. So okay, 1978. But I was
78.
I was just curious because I've never heard of this. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it is super kooky and like honestly really well written, and the jokes were hilarious. So I'm super happy that she showed it to me. I was like, what the fuck is this? I was just laughing and like, this is ridiculous. Super fun.
Where did you watch it? Just in case the people want to know.
I honestly think it was on HBO Plus.
Okay.
it was on one of the streaming services, you know, just like a deep cut that they had on there. So that was pretty neat. My music here for the week is I finally listened to a gift that was given to me a little while ago. So Run the Jewels 4 came out, I believe, last year, a year and a half ago. And as you know, I'm a big fan of Run the Jewels 3, and I have RTJ 4 on vinyl that Sarah got me. And I listened to it like once, maybe like once and a half when it originally came out. Didn't give too much of a like didn't pay too much of attention to it. The single track wasn't that like interesting to me. It sounded like kind of different from what they had done. So I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll check it out later. But I, you know, made the dive and listened to the vinyl for the first time. And I have to say, it totally slaps. I really enjoyed the album as some really strong tracks, very like politically minded, it seems. So I think that's an angle that's always interesting. But finally gave it a listen and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So Run the Jewels 4 was great. And then my food here for the week, Sarah hooked up a London broil. She did it twice, cooked it once for my parents and then another slice just for us. She did this like mustard slash vinegar slash like soy marinade. It was just like all concocted. Let it sit in there for like 24 hours, and it was just banging. It was just chock full of flavor. It was sick. So that London broil was just the tits. So yeah, that's my flavor of the week, dude.
Beautiful. Well, that sounds delicious. And Run the I haven't listened to Run the Jewels 4, so gives me a couple three different things to check out.
There you
So
go.
so I appreciate it. But that does, of course, ladies and gentlemen, bring us to the end of the episode. So, as always, we appreciate you guys listening. Check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter at Tall and Short of One, the number one, if you want to reach out or chat with us there. We always appreciate your Spotify comments and everything. So, thank you guys for listening week after week.
Yeah, new episodes every Thursday, like you said, on Spotify, Google, and video on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. We have really enjoyed bringing you this content. So just thank you for tuning in every week. Show us some love in the comments. And just like every week, peace out, everyone.
Later.